Morning in Westminster. MPs make their way to work, but not everyone's travelling in a chauffeur-driven limousine. Last May, public confidence in Parliament was shattered when it was revealed politicians from all parties were helping themselves to millions of pounds from the public purse. But there's another expensive scandal that's not been in the newspapers. Hundreds of MPs are once again exploiting the public and breaking the law.
You know, it could be the next big scandal in Parliament.
MPs would do well to take a look at their government's own advice.
Inevitably, the law is being abused.
Every year, thousands of bright young graduates flock here to work in MPs' offices in Westminster. They man the phones, conduct constituency casework, write briefing documents. Without them, Parliament simply wouldn't work. And in almost every case, they do all this for free. One such intern who asked to remain nameless is currently working for a former cabinet minister.
I try and get in at 8:30, so I'm there before everyone starts, and probably work until, well, I'm supposed to work until 7, but I normally go a bit later than that. I do a lot of the correspondence, do some casework as well for the parliamentary constituents.
One MP has started a campaign to ensure that all interns in Parliament are paid the minimum wage.
There is a sense that we are doing young graduates a favour by allowing them to come into our offices. In reality, unless you can live in London, unless you've got private means, you cannot be an intern. So this whole idea of actually creating social mobility amongst young graduates is an absolute nonsense.
Alexandra Scott is a paid researcher who previously worked for over a year as an unpaid intern.
Hello, David Heath's office.
I've not actually thought fully how much it cost me, probably because it would have made me cry. I was lucky to have friends close enough to London that I could do it. So for people outside, it's nigh on impossible to get an internship because you can't physically work here.
Campaigners argue that as only the rich can afford to work for free, MPs are effectively excluding those from poorer backgrounds from working in Parliament. Would you agree?
We're wanting to change things, aren't we? We want to see diversity, and we talk about having more women and ethnic minorities in politics, but you're not seeing that in the internship stages, and you're not seeing it in the researchers, so you're not going to see it in the MPs because that's the natural progression at the moment.
The union Unite says there's over 450 interns at any one time working in MPs' offices. That's a total of 18,000 unpaid hours a week. Over half of those don't even get expenses for food or travel. We've even heard of one MP who has a total of 11 interns and no paid staff. Some MPs feel particularly strongly about this because in fact they actually get a staffing allowance of £100,000 a year. David Lammy, who's the Secretary of State for Innovation, Universities and Skills, has criticised employers who don't pay their interns minimum wage.
If there are things going on, of course we want to know, and it is important that young people recognise and know their rights.
However, we've obtained 3 job adverts from David Lammy over the last year for unpaid interns. The adverts call for interns to work full-time for a period of 3 months, with extensive responsibilities, including solving constituents' problems, administrative tasks and policy research. Travel and food expenses are provided, but none of them offer a wage, and David Lammy is not alone. We've uncovered adverts posted in the last few months by David Miliband and Ben Bradshaw of the Labour Party, Alan Duncan and Dominic Grieve of the Conservatives, and Lynn Featherstone and Simon Hughes of the Liberal Democrats. All ask for interns for a minimum of 3 months, with extensive responsibilities, and all offer expenses only.
Well, we would regard an intern working in Parliament as an intern working anywhere else, and they have employment rights and employment law should apply to them.
The law is clear. An intern should be paid if they are working set hours with set responsibilities and they are not a full-time student. Volunteers are exempt only if they work for a charity. I went to speak to a senior employment lawyer at Withers to ask whether she believes David Lammy is breaking the law.
If I were advising David Lammy, I'd be saying, have you thought about paying the minimum wage to these people?
What advice would you give him?
You are running a risk, a fairly significant risk, if you are expecting someone to do this job unpaid.
A report by the former Cabinet Minister Alan Milburn warned last summer that internships risk becoming the preserve of the wealthy. But until an intern is actually willing to take their MP to tribunal, it looks like the exploitation of thousands of young graduates will continue in Parliament.
If one of those people decided to go to court and take the MP to court, they'd have a very good case.
But Phil Willis is hopeful it won't come to that.
We're quite optimistic that having got interns on the agenda, that when the new Parliament sits and the new terms and reference are put forward, that we will actually see some movement in terms of regularising what is expected of interns and how the House should treat them.